back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Matt Continetti joins us as he does most Fridays when we are lucky. Matt is a columnist with the Free Press. He is the senior fellow for domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute. He is a columnist for the Commentary magazine, for the Free Beacon, and a frequent participant in the Commentary podcast. And Matt, I listened to yesterday's podcast about Charlie, and I thought it was excellent. It was not long enough. I want to pick up where you fellows left off, talking about what is to be done. It's the question that's always asked, and unfortunately, the answer is never coherent, sometimes indecent. What is to be done? And I'm assuming that the early evidence is somewhat dispositive that this killer of my colleague Charlie was of the Antifa variety with the catch-it fascist bullet. Now, that could be disproven later that he might be mentally unbalanced, but what is to be done?
Well, the first thing to be done, Hugh, is to try this individual and to charge him to the fullest extent of the law and make sure that he receives punishment as a deterrent to any copycats. And once we've achieved that goal, which takes time, we also need to be thinking about what we can do institutionally as a society to stop copycats and to turn back this culture of violent left-wing terrorism that seems to be rising in the United States of America. And that is a long-term project. I think it does involve more law enforcement. It involves taking the Antifa and the radical movements much more seriously than I think certainly our elites have taken them in the past. But it also means that culturally, Americans need to recommit to the Constitution, to the rule of law, to basic liberties, to everything that Charlie Kirk stood for, everything he was trying to promote when he appeared on the Utah campus earlier this week. He was there to debate. He was there to be accessible. He was there to try to reason with people who disagreed with him, and he was there to try to appeal to young people. And instead, what this demonic character did was snuff that out. And so whatever is to be done, among all the things I listed, we have to resist the temptation to give in to fear here and to let this assassin win in the end.
So, Matt, let's go back to the idea of prosecution and go one step backwards to prevention. We don't know yet who the killer associated with, but no one objected when the FBI infiltrated and prevented the kidnapping and murder of Governor Whitmer. And indeed, 9 of the 14 people charged were convicted, and so I stipulate that's right-wing violence. Nobody objected, at least I didn't, to the prosecution of the January 6th mob, especially those who committed violence. The pardon is a different issue, and there are lots of reasons why the pardon might have been a good idea if you want to accomplish a lot in a hurry. But would you be in favor of the resurrection of COINTELPRO, but with more concern for civil liberties? That being, for the benefit of the Steelers fans, the FBI's attempt to infiltrate the radicals of the 60s. Do you think we need to do that?
I do think we need to do it. I think there's a problem in today's society, which is because of social media, you don't necessarily need the level of organization that we've had with terrorist groups in the past. That as one individual can be radicalized, can be inspired by someone like Luigi Mangione, and then just set on his own course toward doing something despicably evil. That makes it harder to police and to deter these actions. But yeah, I'm for all means that we've used in the past in order to get rid of these groups. I think that's a common sense response. But I also think, Hugh, that we have to have a response at the cultural level. Every college president should be coming out right now and saying the fact that this act happened on campus was a tragedy, and I, as a college president, am recommitting to the principles of free inquiry and open debate and viewpoint diversity. That we don't see that happening, I think, testifies to the decrepit state of the American academy and also points to the ultimate genesis of assassins like Charlie Kirk's killer. They're nurtured in a culture that begins in the universities, a culture of postmodern relativism, of gender ideology, of racial essentialism, of anti-Semitism, and of anti-Americanism. And so those
I'll be right back with Matt Continetti. I'm back with Matt Continetti. Matt, let me throw a spanner into your proposition, which is that the suspected assassin of Charlie is thought to have come from a rather typical LDS family, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they, if it's a rigorous LDS family, send their kids to seminary before they go to public school 5 or 4 days a week. My son played water polo with an LDS kid who was always at water polo practice early after he'd already gone to seminary. So he came out of an intact family, and he goes off to college for 4 years, and or he doesn't. I don't know what happened, and that's the early outline. Is it just the campus, or is it the internet? Because I think it's the latter, and Governor Cox thinks it's the latter, and I don't know what we can do about that. Do you?
Well, I'm not sure it's an either or. I think it can be both.
True.
And I think I'm talking about the actual sources of some of the ideas that are then spread on the internet. And I do think there are some things we can do on the internet. For instance, the algorithm that allowed Charlie Kirk's death to be replayed on and on again, instantaneously all over the world, I think should be changed. I don't understand why we're exposing people to snuff films.
I interviewed Justice Barrett yesterday, 2 days ago. I can't remember when it was. Yeah, 2 days ago. In her new book, she talks about the difficulty of applying law. We couldn't outlaw. We tried to outlaw crush videos of pets, and the Supreme Court struck it down because it was over-inclusive and, for example, prohibited videos on dressing a deer after it had been shot. So it's very hard to write constitutional prohibitions, Matt. Very, very hard.
Yeah, it is. I mean, maybe we should revisit that case, though, because the court has changed, and Alito's dissent in that case was, I think, one of the jewels in his very large crown. And
impressive display of non-lawyer con law credentials.
Two can play at this game, Hugh. Look, nevertheless,
well played, Mr. Bond.
We need to have some type of parental controls on social media. We need to listen to Jonathan Haidt. We need to promote what he's talking about in terms of getting our kids free of the algorithm, free of the devices. I don't think that we're completely impotent here, but it will take effort, and I think it will take courage. I mean, that was why I think the event hit so hard, is that Charlie Kirk was a courageous figure. He was going into the lion's den. He was trying to change people's minds. He was unapologetic about his support for President Trump and for MAGA, and he paid for that with his life. And so we can't just react by saying, well, I'm not sure, the problem is too big. We have to take some action.
I have another suggestion, which I'm going to throw at you after the break, Matt, because it involves the people who populate our media spaces. We can't continue to tolerate stupid people on TV. And I mean that not in a derogatory, but an objective sense. We just can't have stupid people doing the news anymore. I'll be right back with Matt Continetti. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Matt Continetti is my guest. Matt, I want to go, before we go to the internet, which is difficult, let's do TV and other broadcasts, which is easy. So many people got in trouble because they said stupid things over the last couple of 48 hours, things that were based in ignorance of Charlie Kirk. They had no idea that Turning Point was organic, that he started it in 2012 when he was 18. He embraced Donald Trump, and Donald Trump embraced him, but that's not why it grew. It grew because he had worked at it for 4 years, and they called him divisive. He's not divisive. He was actually kind of open-handed, open-faced, smiling. Do we need to get ignorant, willfully ignorant people? Stupid you can't change, but ignorance is a choice, right? On TV, do we have to insist maybe they don't look as good, but they've got to be smart?
Yes, we would hope so. The one problem, Hugh, is that the two sides in our political debate are so far apart that the left liberal side has really no conception of what the right is. I think the right, the conservatives, we have to know what the left and what the liberals are doing because it's our job to stop them, right? But for liberals who dominate the media in particular, they have no reason in their minds to understand conservatives. So they're completely ignorant of what's happening with MAGA, what's happening in the conservative movement or the Republican Party. And you would hope that the network bosses would say, at the very least, we need to have people on television who have some understanding of both sides of the political equation. Because a lot of the stupidity you point to is being uttered by people who just they've no idea what a Republican or what a MAGA supporter is. All they know is the caricature that they're being fed by the liberal media to which they belong. I think that's where it
This is why
begins.
I think Barry Weiss going to CBS, if it happens, would be such a profoundly important development. And I work for Fox and I work for Salem, and we don't need Barry to tell us when we have to be diverse and how do we be fair. But boy, CBS needs it. And all the other networks need it. And they got to get it in a hurry. Matt, what about the school district? A profoundly stupid thing was said by a superintendent in Northern Virginia. I don't have the exact quote in front of me. In the aftermath of Charlie's murder, and they talked about other victims of color and colonialism, blah blah blah. It was like the most tenured, stone deaf thing I've heard in a long time. What do we do about these administrators with tenure?
We have to fire them. But this just underscores why I think so many people have been disturbed and disheartened by what has happened this week, Hugh. It's what I felt. I took this assassination as further evidence that we are becoming two nations. Our mentalities are completely different. We don't, the left has no idea what is happening on the right. So many people in important cultural positions simply recycle these PC cliches, which have been completely disproved by the events of the past 4 years. That I think is the crisis. And so it's not just one school superintendent. We have to begin to think about how do we reassert the Constitution? How do we reassert our shared identity of Americans? And how do we apply the rule of law in places where it just has not touched? These are the policies we need to pursue if we're going to keep this republic going past its 250th birthday.
Yeah, I quoted an old quote from Peter Berger to the Justice Barrett last week, which was, yeah, Peter Berger said this, not Hugh Hewitt. If India is the most religious nation in the world and Sweden is the least, then America is a nation of Indians ruled by Swedes. And I think he's still right, ever more. So I do believe giving a lift to those who believe in a creator and a natural law would be of great assistance. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think one reason we're seeing this new nihilism is the collapse of faith in so many parts of the United States. And we need to understand that Peter Berger's description is not quite true any longer. The number of people who feel unattached from religion, who profess no particular belief, who don't attend services regularly, is growing and is situated on the left. That's another, I think, aspect of this divide that I'm talking about. But to the degree that we perpetuate the United States for another 250 years, it will be because just as at the beginning, just as what Alexis de Tocqueville saw when he visited in the 1830s, we were a nation of churches. And that religious mentality, that faith in a creator and a higher order is what allowed us to practice democracy in a way that was the envy of the world. So we absolutely have to encourage religion. And the good news is, I think that Charlie Kirk represented a religious revival among young Americans. We're seeing it in people turning to Catholicism. We're seeing it in Protestant campuses and revival meetings. We're seeing it among young people who are turning away rather, from the atheism of just the past couple decades. And so that is to be encouraged, and it's one more reason why Charlie's death is such a tragedy.
You know, last night I was with a friend, Alan Estrin, who co-founded PragerU with Dennis, and Alan made the remark that the assassination of Charlie hit so hard because Charlie was at about 40% of his capacity. He was already as big as Rush. He was already having the impact of Rush, and who knows what he would have done over 30, 40 years. And so, and part of that was his evangelicalism. I mean, the guy was really preaching towards the last 2 years. It was not much of that when I first met him in 2012 or 2013, but he had become really quite a spokesperson. By the way, I've noticed it on the commentary pod. Do you hear it as well? More faith, less reason. I mean, Jerusalem and Athens together, yes, but more faith, less reason. Do you hear it?
I hear it, I do. I look, these are important parts of anyone's life. I think that Charlie Kirk was pointing young people toward the real well springs of human flourishing. He was married, he had two beautiful young children, he was deeply religious, and he was active in his community. I think all we know about the human experience and philosophy shows that those are the things that give us a meaningful life. And that's why we have to emulate Charlie Kirk even as we remember him.
I'm going to talk with Matt one more segment off air about his article, The Midterms. I think it's at the Free Press, so stay tuned. I'm back with Matt. Matt, I read your article on we've got to focus on the midterms. And you're right, we don't know because it's 13 months away. Voting begins. It could go either way. But it's very important not to disable the Trump presidency. Do you expect that there will be any lasting political consequence from the assassination of a young political activist and leader?
Well, I think it could be a galvanizing moment. I think young people are revisiting Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was already a presence in their lives, but the shock of this past week, I think, has led to people recirculating Charlie Kirk posts, to recirculating Charlie Kirk video. And I understand that Turning Point USA is going to continue its work. And now it has that kind of rallying point to show that they won't be intimidated by what happened this week. That's important. And so it could help and get young people out to vote next year. And that's the important thing about a midterm, Hugh, as you know. It's really going to come down to intensity. It's really going to come down to which side has voters who are more willing to go to the polls and support the candidates of their party. And that is, I think, the problem facing the Republicans is that Republicans, they're pretty happy with what Donald Trump is doing. They might not feel as much of an urge to protect the Republican majority in the House, whereas Democrats have gone off the wall, as you and I talk about every week. And so they are much, much more eager to get out and vote. So anything that can be done to even that scale of voter intensity and energy is important if the Republicans are going to keep the Congress after 2026.
And very quickly, Matt, in fact, I may have to ask you to stay a minute in the next segment. You also asked who will stop us in this abyss. And I came up with J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz, Elise Stefanik. I'm optimistic about the GOP political leadership. Are you?
I am optimistic, Hugh, but I do think it's going to take more than a political leader. I think that the trends that you and I have been talking about are so deep and so toxic, it's going to take every one of us to prevent America's slide, encouraged and helped by our leadership. But simply having a leader, I think, won't be enough.
Well said. I will then end it on that. Matt Continetti from AEI Commentary, the Free Press, the Free Beacon. Thank you. Follow him on X at Continetti and stay tuned.